England and Argentina this weekend, folks. It is another one of these kind of top of the table clashes. If you're looking at the world rankings, two of the top six sides, so sides who will be at the next World Cup as tier one sides, not in each other's pool, going head to head, should make for good viewing. Both flying pretty high. Comeback win over the Scots, emphatic win over the All Blacks. But England really do have Argentina's number. Argentina wins against England in rugby are pretty rare. Pretty rare in recent years. But we'll go through the squads which have been named, some of the stats for the sides, the changes, the predictions. You guys can let us know your thoughts on how this weekend's game is going to go. And if you think the Argentinians can break that kind of recent tradition. For England, they've got a heap of injuries. Dingwall's out. He's a late change despite being initially named it on the graphic. He's been replaced by Max Ojomoh, who's going to get like his second cap, but a guy that everyone is seemingly pretty excited to see more of at international rugby. Roebuck, George, Lawrence, Freeman, all these guys unavailable. And there's a return of a few veterans, so Steve Borthwick's hand has been a little bit forced, and yet he's gone with a mix of youth and experience, I guess. Like Henry Slade is back. Very different player from Ollie Lawrence, but he's got some silky handling skills if he can get the back line partly going. And Elliot Daly, another one of the veterans, he hasn't played rugby since he's been injured. Back on the Lions tour. So, yeah, of all the wingers you guys have got in England, Elliot Daly is an interesting call, but he is a guy who cops a lot of flack. I've got to caution myself about being in that boat. But, yeah, I just know you guys have got a lot of exciting wingers in England that I would love to see get a crack. But, Elliot Daly's got a big old boot on him as well. So it might be interesting to see if they kick as they did against the All Blacks or rein that in a little bit as they have done a couple of weeks before. Genge, Cowan-Dickie and Opoku-Fordjour is a all-changed front row. Genge and Cowan-Dickie are up from the bench to get starts. Steve Borthwick seems to be doing a little bit of that rotation, which is a good thing for depth building, for managing the players' minutes and whatnot. And then Opoku-Fordjour is a guy who people have been talking to me about for, I want to say, a year or two as the potential long-term solution answer at tight head for England. So see how he goes up against the Argentinian pack. Itoje made 22 tackles last week against the AB, so he's going to be leading from the front, one would imagine, in that regard again. And then Alex Coles continues alongside him. He won like 5 lineouts. He was England's top lineout man in the lineout, which was looking a bit shaky to be fair, but we'll get to the stats shortly. Pepper, Underhill, and Earl. No changes in the back row, which has been, I think, pretty effective in November. And I mean, Ben Earl, 20 carries last week. The guy is just so hungry for work. Ben Spencer is going to get a start, which sees Alex Mitchell drop to the bench. So there's a little bit of a change. Ford continues. He's pretty good against my ABs. I'm trying to forget that game, but drop goals when they needed them, pushing the team around the park, and defensively solid. So, yeah, deserves another crack. And then, as I said, the midfield is the one area where you might be, I guess, a touch worried in terms of just the change. Maybe a bit of a lack of cohesion there, especially when you consider the Argentinians put a lot of ball through their midfield last week, although they've got changes there as well. Feyi-Waboso switches to the right wing. Keep getting that guy into space. He had 3 line breaks against the ABs. He was your top man in that regard, so keep getting him the ball. You feel like good things are going to happen. As I mentioned, Daly is back. And then Steward, who left the pitch pretty early last week, is back and available at 15. Now, he's going to be a good guy to have because we've seen it against the All Blacks in the Rugby Championship. The Argentinians are quite happy to put up high balls and put teams under pressure that way. So if he can defuse them, all the better for England. Theo gets a crack with Jamie George being injured, so his Saracens teammate isn't there. Finn Baxter, who's quietly maybe becoming one of my favourite England players. What a tackle machine, and he's doing really well at scrummaging at test level. He drops to the bench. Will Stewart has been solid as a rock, you feel. On the tight head for England, Charlie Ewels comes back in. Haven't seen him play for England for a while. So your locking changes are happening there. And then Tom Curry seems to be getting a little bit of that super sub thing going on alongside Henry Pollock. And then Alex Mitchell and Marcus Smith are the only 2 backs on the bench. So Steve Borthwick continues to go with the 6-2 with a bunch of forwards who could potentially fill in the back line if needs be. For the Argentinians, they have likewise made a few changes. They've promoted Gallo from the bench role to starting at loose head, and he led the way, I think, in the forwards, especially for Argentina, for defenders beaten. He had 5 of them last week. He is a proper wrecking ball of a loose head prop. So him and Genge going at it both from each other's loose head will be a fun one to watch. Montoya, captain, fantastic. He'll be very familiar to Premiership fans with all those years he played for the Tigers. So, yeah, continues to captain the side. And Delgado is the tight head there. He's also been pretty solid, which is pleasing because at times the Argentinian scrum has been a bit of a chink in their armour, but he's looking all right. Petti and Rubiolo likewise continue on in the second row. And then Gonzalez, Juan Gonzalez, another familiar Premiership face. There are many of them in this Argentinian squad. He shifts to the number 6 jersey this week to make way for Marcos Crema, who will likely lead their tackle count in the number 7 jumper, and Juan Gonzalez will need to keep doing his line-out work and work around the park. Grondona maybe doesn't get the same plaudits that Crema and Gonzalez and Matera get in that back row, but the guy made 18 tackles last week against the Scots, so has likewise been putting in a big shift. And then there's big news at 10 with Thomas Albanaz back. I would have thought for sure, based on the bench performance we saw from Santi Carreras last week, where he helped the Argentinians pull the game out of the fire against the Scots, they might have gone with Santi, but no, Albanaz is back from an injury and straight back into that number 10 jersey. Guy's class. Really, really danger weapon of a player at 10. It's just a big call to bring him back, I guess like Elliot Daly for England, like back from injury and straight into a start. He's alongside Benitez Cruz at 9. Picardo comes in at 12. There's no Chocobares. He's been rested, although I did read on the America's Rugby News site that he's been experiencing a bit of dizziness. He's had a lot of rugby, so best to give him a rest and let him fully recover. The veteran Moroni's there at 13. And then another big call with Mateo Carreras not being in the side. He's been a real danger man for the Argentinians on the wing. He's replaced by Delgado, who is a big danger man as well. But I mean, Mateo Carreras was incredible last week. He led their carry count for a winger, led their run meters count, which is not surprising, led their line breaks. Like, he was just in unbelievable form. Iscaro continues on the right, and then Malia is still there at fullback. So it's a pretty sexy looking Pumas back 3. Ruiz, Wegner, and Rapetti are the front row replacements, so there's a little bit of a lack of experience in the props there. Potentially an area for England to exploit in the second half. Molina is there as the lock replacement. He'll likely come on for Petti, I would imagine. Then Matera is again going to do that super sub thing that he did last week. Oviedo is the other loose forward replacement, so they've also gone with a 6-2 split, with just Mojano and Carreras, the 2 back replacements. Some stats for these sides. England, again, for all the chat they get about the kicks, and they did up the kick count against the All Blacks last week compared to the previous 2 weeks where they'd kind of reined that in a little bit. It was to be expected because it's been a vulnerability of the ABs. I do want to keep highlighting, and the reason I mentioned the kicking is because they're the highest kicking tier 1 side in 2025. So it's part of their game. But what they don't often get credit for, and Borthwick gets called boring, like second test against Argentina when they toured earlier in the year during the Lions tour, 9 line breaks. Versus Australia, 9 line breaks. Versus New Zealand, 9 line breaks. Like, most sides average like maybe 4 or 5, 6 would be good. 9. Like, there's multiple games this year where they are busting the opposition lines. Admittedly, the line out last week was a little bit shaky, and the penalty count was a little bit too high. But I just want to highlight that Borthwick's side still does sexy stuff with a regularity this year. Argentina, their attacking numbers have come a long way. Like, if you haven't seen Argentina play, if you're an English fan, since you guys toured them earlier in the year, when Contepome was just starting with Argentina, their attack has come a long way. Like, the numbers really show that they were averaging less than 3 meters a carry back then. They're closer to 4 now. They were 2 point something, 2.4, 2.5. Now they're up to like 3.6, 3.7, sometimes 4. So their attack is certainly getting more punch. And speaking of line breaks, like, they got 10 line breaks in 2 games against England earlier in the year. Whereas this year alone, like in the second game against South Africa in the Rugby Championship, they got 10 against the Box in that game, 12 against Scotland, 14 against Wales. So these guys, likewise, can certainly play some sexy rugby. But England is the team, which is like their kryptonite. Of the last 5, Argentina's only won 1. That was back when it was like Eddie Jones's England versus Michael Checker's Argentina. That was 2022. That was a 1-pointer, 30 points to 29. And the last 4 have all gone England's way. 27-10, 26-23, 35-12, 22-17. So all English wins. And then of the last 15, England have won 14. So England's record against Argentina is very, very comfortable. Like, in that same time, if you look back at Argentina's last 15 matches against the All Blacks, they've won almost a third of them. They won 4. So their record against the All Blacks is way better than their record against England. England is a team which really proves to be difficult for Argentina to break down. The average score across the last 5 is 28-18 to England. So England relatively comfortable in most of their games. Will this game break that trend? Not according to the predictions. The bookies are saying England by 10. The Rugby Forecast algorithm saying England by 12. It is on at Twickenham. Pierre Brousset, the Frenchman, is the ref. 4:10 local kickoff, which is a fairly early morning kickoff for me, but I'll be watching it. Hopefully it's a good game. You guys let us know your thoughts. It's a Monday morning for me, but it's a Sunday over in the UK. Rank 3, rank 6. Should be a cracker. How do you think it's going to go? Both sides in good form. And yeah, cheers for being here. Take care. Talk to you guys again soon. See you later.